Welcome into the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Zac Robinson. It is our Tuesday tradition. It is the big time throwcast edition of the PFF pod where we go through quarterback play from the previous week, diving into the good, the bad, and the ugly from week 14 now. Wow, this season is flying by. Zac, another full week of action, and as always, you got to go back and watch every single throw of the week. How you doing now?
Pretty good, yeah, not too bad. Solid weeks across the board, kind of for QBs. We'll talk about some of those guys. Mitchell Trubisky on the Sam's team of the week this week. That was good to see him, at least show some capabilities of throwing the ball a little bit down the field and the intermediate level. And then, some other guys mixed in there. We had the snow game, with Nathan Peterman. That was interesting to watch there, but
not for
overall,
quarterback play.
For quarterback play, it was bad, but yeah, overall pretty solid week across the board.
Let me talk about the snow game real quick before we dive in. It's going to be about Carson Wentz, Nick Foles. We got Trubisky, as you mentioned, little Marcus Mariota coming up. Snow game, though, how do you approach that? You ever played a crazy game like that in the snow, and how does that affect your preparation as a quarterback, and what do you have to do throwing the ball?
I grew up in Denver, so we had tons of snow games growing up, little league, high school. We always loved it. It always almost felt like just a looser atmosphere because you're like, hey, what can we do about this? We're going to play in the snow, and we're just going to have to deal with the elements. So kind of guys just almost played a little looser, and obviously, you're not handling the ball as well, and you're not taking the shots that you can typically. But, in terms of just kind of mentally and how you're playing, you kind of just go out there and just play ball like you're in the backyard as a kid.
Yeah, that's what it looked like for that Bills-Colts game. A lot of fun to watch. Okay, of course, the big news, Carson Wentz out for the season with a torn ACL. The Eagles still in control of the NFC East at least. Of the NFC, the number one seed. Nick Foles will replace him. This is bringing flashbacks of the 1990 Giants, Zac. That was when Phil Simms went down later in the year. Jeff Hostetler steps in, and they still managed to win the Super Bowl that year. Can the Eagles make a similar run with Nick Foles at the helm over Carson Wentz?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot right out of the
yes
gates.
Or no?
There's definitely some good stuff with Nick Foles. He's a good backup quarterback, and he's he's got the pros and the cons that come with being a backup quarterback. You look at how they're built right now offensively. We've seen all year. We've talked about it. The timing and the rhythm of Wentz. Timing routes on the outside, the RPO game, deep shots, play action, and then just Wentz with his Houdini kind of plays, running around making plays has been how he's been able to do it. And the third down success obviously plays a big part. So does he have the kind of pinpoint, accuracy that we've seen Wentz throw consistently in tight coverage that we've talked about? They see the most man-to-man coverage in the NFL, trying to take away, some of that RPO game and not give you as clean windows. So that's what it's going to come down to. Is he pinpoint enough, like Wentz was, to continuously stick those throws in tight coverage and then push the ball down the field and let his guys make plays.
Yeah, on one hand, I look at the Eagles and I say they seem like they're equipped because it was more than just Carson Wentz. As well as he played this year and as much of a great step forward he's taken in year two in his development, they do have a good offensive line. They've got playmakers at wide receiver with Alshon Jeffrey, with Nelson Aguilar breaking out. We've seen all of those tight ends be productive now. Plus a defense that has probably the best pass rush as far as defensive line goes in the entire league, and in a better secondary than we've seen in recent years. So it's a good overall team. And then you add Jay Ajayi to the mix as a running back with LeGarrette Blount. They do seem like a team that could be more of a run-first team and maybe take a little bit of pressure off Foles. But then I look at how good Wentz was on third down. And even with all that talent, they were still in third and long quite a bit. And it was Wentz's third down magic, which was as good as anybody in the league, better than anybody in the league this year. That was what continued to bail them out. That's where I have my doubts, is if Foles can duplicate that success in those must-pass situations.
I'm with you. That's we saw it just last week before he got injured. There was just numerous times in the red zone, the throw to Ertz in the end zone. I mean, just tight throw after tight throw on third down. They scheme as well as anybody in the NFL on third down. They know they're going to get man-to-man coverage on 3 to 5, and they get favorable matchups, bunch formations, and they're able to scheme it up for him. And then if it's not there, that guy's got some magic in him to make it happen with his legs or find something down the field. So does he have enough? Does Foles have enough in him to do that, or are they going to slow the game down quite a bit, let their defense kind of carry him in the running game? Like you said, it's going to be tough. It's hard to see Wentz go down, man. I mean, everybody was loving just his style of play and everything that it was bringing to really the whole NFL. So tough loss losing him, but shoot, there still is some good with Nick Foles that he could potentially lead them on here.
Yeah, we're trying to be somewhat optimistic here. I am with you. We could spend many minutes talking about Wentz and his development and all the things that he's done. And again, like I said, so impressed with what he has done this year. We've been using quick twitch to describe him, Zach, behind the scenes here. And you're seeing just his athleticism in and out of the pocket seems so improved since last year, and he's using it and just making him so dangerous. Just to give it the quick synopsis on Foles' career, started in 2012, 71.1 PFF grade, all a part of PFF Edge if you guys are interested in these grades. 2013 was the year that he had that crazy statistical season. That was Chip Kelly's first year with the Eagles, 119 passer rating, 27 touchdowns against 2 interceptions, but only an 80.9 PFF grade. And it's one of the model seasons that I use as this guy was elevated by his playmakers in the scheme. A lot of easy throws that year that elevated his stats, and statistically came back down to earth in 2014, as did his PFF grade, down to 73.5. And then 2015, his last chance starting, or his last opportunity starting, was with the Rams, 68.4 grade. So we're talking about a guy that's just been okay when given the ball as a starter with that one peak year of 2013. So pieces are in place for the Eagles to at least win some games with Foles. I think it's the deep playoff run that they were expected to make, I do think is in question. So interested to see. Is there anything, real quick, just to wrap it up, anything that you would do to adjust to Foles, his skill set? Is it more of a run-first attack? Is there something that he does as a passer that maybe you do differently compared to Wentz?
I think you are going to have to tick back on the RPOs. He's just not as quick with the ball. We saw, a couple times they ran it last week. Just doesn't have the same type of effect as it does with Wentz back there. So maybe a tick back on those, still be a part of the offense. I think he's great under center, play action, trying to get the ball down the field. He's got a good feel in the pocket. We talked about it off air. You mentioned he can drift from time to time, but
yes,
he can move around in there and extend the play fairly well for not being an overly athletic guy like Wentz. So there's still some of that in there. They're seeing the most man-to-man coverage in the NFL, like we said, but just in terms of single high, they see it 70% of the time. So he's going to have plenty of opportunities on the outside to make stick-it type throws on deep stops and out cuts. That's kind of where Wentz lives from time to time is on those timing routes on the outside. So how do they kind of make up for that with Foles? Can he be pinpoint in tight man-to-man coverage outside the numbers is definitely something that you're going to kind of monitor from here on out.
Let's go to Chicago now, and Mitch Trubisky with the highest graded game of his young career, the rookie first-round pick. And we've been saying, hey, let's unleash Mitch Trubisky. Enough of these games where he's only throwing the ball 15 times. And I don't know if this is considered unleashed, but he at least threw the ball 32 times. He completed 25. That's 78% completions. And that includes a spike and a batted pass and a drop in there. So when he was he actually got the ball toward a target, 25 for 30 for 271 and a touchdown. What'd you see from Trubisky against a Cincinnati defense that I think helped him out just a little bit?
Yeah, maybe just a touch. He was good, and I don't think he's been, he had the Philadelphia game that just didn't go his way, but throughout the season he hasn't had any disastrous games. He's kind of been able to stay in the middle and just do what was required. This game, like you said, he kind of got unleashed a little bit, worked through progressions. We talked about just how quick-minded he is, and this was a game where it definitely showed up in terms of him clicking through his progressions, getting to the guy, and throwing it with really good accuracy. But the Cincinnati linebackers were a huge, huge problem. They kind of simplified the scheme, and he definitely, just exploited all the coverages throughout the game with his cleanliness, with how he was reading the field.
Yeah, it did seem like he had a lot of open throws over the middle of the field. Not everyone was open, but I do know that when we're going back and watching Trubisky's best throws this year, it seems like a lot of them have been tight window throws over the middle of the field, which was something we did see at UNC. I thought he did a really nice job in the middle of the field accuracy. I thought that was on display. Last week we were talking about Jimmy G, and it was Jimmy G and Trubisky going head to head last week, and you
same guy,
right? You've made the point that they were the same guy as far as traits go, and the way they work the pocket, and how they work through progressions and all these different things. And this did, I think, put all of his positive attributes on display in this game. I thought his one touchdown was just it was the simple red zone play action. You've got a corner route to the tight end, but the ball placement on it was fantastic, up and away from coverage. Thought that was great. So I just thought he looked comfortable, made good decisions, and as bad as the Cincinnati linebackers played, Trubisky was able to take advantage.
It looked like a typical college game that he played last year at North Carolina, minus maybe a couple big-time throws down the field. He didn't have any completions over 20-plus yards. He didn't really need it. He was just, taking what was there in between the numbers. From 0 to 19 last week, he was 9 for 10 for 139 yards. So he, wow, like you were saying there, he was seeing the middle of the field clearly, cleanly, and was throwing with accuracy. But you kind of looked at take it for what it is with the Bengals defense and what was going on. It looked structure-wise like a game from his college. The Bengals were very, very simple overall, and kind of played some quarters and three and stuff that he's used to seeing at North Carolina. So I think maybe it matched up with his eye a little bit. There wasn't too many odd blitz looks and a lot of movement for him to handle. So we saw what he can be. I mean, he's got plenty of tools to work with and the arm to go with it. So definitely a step in the right direction for him.
It is interesting when you watch games side by side. There are certain games where defenses just make it so difficult on the offense. There are games like this where there are a lot of open throws. There are a lot of plays to be made. That's why I don't like to just make this, grand adjustment for competition and say, well, you played against the Seahawks, therefore it must have been difficult. When you actually watch the game, it could have been an easy game going up against the Seahawks on that particular day. The Bengals throughout the season have had a really good pass rush. They have had some games where they've made life difficult for opposing quarterbacks, but this one just wasn't the case. And so I think each game is just its own little story. And I think, again, the story of this one, Trubisky did everything he needed to do to take advantage of the defensive structures that Cincinnati threw at him. He's up to 26th now in PFF grades at 74.8. So I think when you look big picture with Trubisky, when we've talked about him previously, we've got this offensive line that's had a lot of injuries this year, a playmaking group that you just don't have any guys that really stand out as like, okay, here's a go-to guy, or here's a guy that you could really rely on. So I think, when you add it all up, where do you think this rookie season is for Trubisky? We've learned not to write guys off, obviously, or declare them as the next big thing. But I think it's just been, solid overall. And once they get more playmakers in there, that some exciting things could be happening in Chicago. I
agree. I mean, the stats wise doesn't look great, but I think solid kind of sums it up. It hasn't been, this was obviously his by far his best week. He's had some big throws down the field that you'd hope to see, and then he's had, the games where he struggled, where any rookie's going to struggle in those games, and they've been the teams like, the Packers and some of these teams that junk it up defensively. There's some different blitz looks that he's not comfortable with, and that blitz recognition was kind of his thing coming out. So a year later, getting the reps of seeing all these different types of looks that defenses are going to throw at him, and not just the standard college type, defensive structures. That's going to go a long way. But overall, I think he's played really solid considering what he's got around him, and with him, Tariq Cohen, the tight end Shaheen. I mean, they got 3 rookies that are contributing, as big as anyone on the team on offense. So definitely some good pieces in place for the future for him.
Yeah, definitely want to see some more talent on the outside of receiver, but you do mention some good pieces to at least work with for the future. So let's go on the other end of the spectrum now. Marcus Mariota, Tennessee Titans, a guy that, the PFF grade has been a lot higher than the grades have shown this year. He's made a ton of big-time throws that I think maybe haven't been rewarded on the stat sheet. He's got a ton of interceptions that, some are not all on him, and he's kind of the guy that has been not nearly as bad as the stats, but at the same time, I think there are a lot of issues that he's shown this year. 14 interceptions, that's second most in the NFL, but this was not one of his finer games against Arizona this past weekend. Reportedly injured his knee early in the game. I don't know how much that affected him, but what did you see from Mariota, his accuracy, decision-making, and one of his worst games of the season against Arizona?
Yeah, there was, mix of bad accuracy, the decision-making. He had one pick that receiver failed to break to the post and left him out to dry, made him look bad, and it ended up intercepted.
Yeah, he threw that before the break, right? He threw it before the break, and he was expecting the receiver to cross the face of the safety, and he did it.
One of those where you're trusting the receiver cross face. If anything, this is going to be a contested, either pass defense or a contested catch situation. He took it outside for some reason, so. That was a little tough, and then he came back and he had a bad misread coverage over the middle of the field that got picked. He was generally getting to the right guy. It's just the overthrows, missing guys in front. We've talked about it a ton on here. Just the rhythm to his game. There is no rhythm to his game. Everything looks hard. The bad footwork leads to the inaccuracies, the timing within the play. It throws them all out of sorts, and for a guy that's in his third year of development, you would think that he would be taking a bigger stride in terms of just overall fundamentals and how to play in the pocket and footwork and how it matches up with the routes. And that's where he gets in trouble, and that's kind of where we've seen him struggle. But he still has some big time throws down the field, especially off of play action that have helped him grade wise throughout the year.
Is that what you would all chalk it up to? We talk about Mariota's footwork here. As that's kind of like the main thing that we talk about when we break down Mariota. Part of the scouting report from me coming out of Oregon was, here's this guy that's generally accurate. Accuracy I don't think is like a yes or no thing. Like it's on a continuum, so to speak. You've got when you're accurate, are you putting the ball in the right place for catch and run opportunities? Can you make tight window throws? But also there's also the yes no component. Do you throw a catchable pass or not? Mariota's one of those guys where on a lot of the passes you're like, hey, that's pretty accurate. That's a good catch and run opportunity. That's good ball location. Really nice. And then on other passes, it's just a pure miss. And part of the scouting report coming out of Oregon, I was like, man, this guy's accurate, but he also just misses a bunch of random throws. Is that all the footwork? Is that all just, he's not consistent with some of the, the basics of quarterback play?
That's what I see when I watch it, and I think, there's so much just timing and really. You talk about the West Coast offense, Bill Walsh, a guy that really was, kind of a pioneer in terms of how exactly your feet need to be, how many hitches to this throw, how many hitches to this throw, 5 on the plant to this throw, and there's just no element of his game that shows that, and I think it just leads to, like you said, the wild misses here and there that really shouldn't be there. He adds a lot of extra steps throughout his drop. Sometimes it should be 3, and then he takes an extra little 2, and then the play is all on him to make it up with his arm. And arm talent wise, I think we're in agreement. He's got good arm talent, but it's not enough to make up for some of his bad footwork and what you see in the pocket, in terms of his drops.
Yeah, what do you think of his arm? We've discussed this before too. I've never thought that he has a cannon for an arm, but he makes up with it with a quick release. He's got a good arm, a great arm, below average. Where do you stand as far as just pure velocity for him?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think he's got enough zip. The one area that we've discussed a little bit is just the kind of up and over throws at the intermediate level. He's definitely more of a window type thrower where he sees a clear window, zip it in there with decent arm strength, but the up and over throws, up and over backers where you got to kind of layer it over is some of the times where he misses. More of a flat ball type thrower in that regard.
Yeah, so he still has the biggest split as far as play action, no play action goes in the NFL. It is like night and day. I don't think, I have to dig this up, Zach. I don't think we've seen a split this drastic since RG3's rookie season, 2012. This is using play action. Mariota's passer rating is 123.6. That is second in the league. He's averaged 10.8 yards per attempt. That is also second in the league. But when not using play action, dead last in passer rating at 61.8 and tied for 32nd in yards per attempt. And usually what this tells you is, look, play action work is going to fluctuate a little bit. Play action is generally going to give you some cleaner throws. You're moving the defense. We've talked about that quite a bit too, and how teams should just run more play action, right? Because more good happens than bad when you're running play action, unless I guess you're Tom Savage, who has a 44.9 rating. But that's a different story. But when you're not using play action, those must-pass situations, the same situations that we've been touting Carson Wentz for excelling in. It's third and long. They know you're going to pass, and you got to make plays. You got to make tight window throws. Mariota dead last in passer rating and just not grading well in those situations either. So it's that's a bit concerning. I think when you look at his game and his development and how much is on him, the receiving core, anything that you could pinpoint to what's going on with that major difference so far this season?
I don't know if I think Titans fans, that watch week to week are not completely satisfied with the scheme and all those things and what they've tried to build around him. I don't have a problem really with the scheme that much, and the playmakers around him I think are fine. They need Corey Davis to come along next year and really, I mean, they need him to come around this year down the stretch, but it will be interesting to see in the future if they kind of say, you know what, this ground and pound attack, like let's build around our guy, what he was best at Oregon, spread him out a little bit. We've seen the Eagles, all these teams that are adapted to their guy and their exact strengths. That's going to be something to see, if that's a major change they'll make in the offseason and truly tailor an offense to what he does best, and instead of getting under center with the run game and all these things. But I think concept-wise, what they're running, it's not, they're not doing anything bad by any means. They run some basic concepts that you see all across the NFL, but those numbers, those play action splits are pretty staggering. 12 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, no play action. I mean, it's definitely alarming.
They need future Hall of Famer Corey Davis to get off the ground. Only 25 catches. I predicted. Did you hear my prediction for Corey Davis during draft time?
I think I've heard it float around through the grapevine a little bit.
Everybody makes fun of me every time he makes a catch. It's like another step toward greatness. But I was asked for a bold pick, Zach, and I said that Corey Davis would be top 10 all-time in receptions by the time his career ends. So he's got 25. Right. He's got a little ways to go. But he reminded me of Keenan Allen, who's now playing like a top 5 receiver. We haven't seen that just yet from Davis, but I do think ultimately he will end up breaking out at some point. It seems like Mariota could use that. A guy that can get open consistently at the intermediate level would help quite a bit. All right, let's go through some good and some bad from this past week. We got 3 quarterbacks on the good side, 3 quarterbacks on the bad side. We'll go rapid fire. One quarterback that we've discussed as bad in recent weeks, but seemingly turned it around, Dak Prescott. His best game in weeks for the Cowboys against the Giants. What did you see from Dak?
Yeah, he came back, first of all, clean pockets this week, 78.8%, which was best in the NFL this week. Overall, just like had his feel back in the pocket. Accuracy was good all the way through. Had a great stick nod throw to Jason Witten in the red zone. That was one of the better throws of the week.
That was beautiful.
Really,
actually, yeah.
really just controlled the pocket better. It was a cleaner pocket, but he also moved and found the checkdowns when he needed to, and just generally just got to the right guy with accuracy. I think it was good to see him back to good Dak, because those last few weeks were tough to watch.
Also had a nice stat patter at the end of the game, 81-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
That on a quick slant. Those are always nice. You always take those.
Yeah, Dez took a slant too. The stats wise is way up there for the run after the catch. I think there was 2 50+ yard run after catch. So not quite as good as the stats, but still very, very good day for that.
Yeah, definitely a good bounce back week for him. Phillip Rivers, who now over the last 4 weeks, it's a small sample, but it's just indicative of where he is. Top graded quarterback in the NFL over the last 4 weeks, and pretty much all major statistics. Phillip Rivers, number 1. He was outstanding against Washington, hitting the open man, driving the ball down the field. They schemed open some nice throws and torched Josh Norman a couple times. What'd you see from Rivers this week and in the last few weeks? We broke him down in depth last week, but he's still one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, he's playing better than anyone. I mean, he you look at his play under pressure, the deep ball, everything that he's doing, accuracy, placement, decision making. He's playing at a very, very, very high level, even for his standards. But this offense is fun to watch right now. They are tough to stop. He's just playing with a different kind of mojo, and I think he can feel it that, hey, this is a team set up that maybe we can do some damage down the stretch and in the playoffs. For the first time in a very long time that he's had there. So he's definitely feeling it. Keenan Allen getting down the field, your guy in the middle of the field.
That's right.
Hunter Henry. They're all, there's a bunch of guys, and he is throwing the ball really well with accuracy all over the place.
And Jimmy Garoppolo, another good game for him. The Jimmy G stats that are floating around the internet are hilarious. He's a 4-0 as a starter. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. I mean, he's got a Hall of Fame resume right now with 4 starts under his belt, and another good PFF grade for him as well.
He was good. He was solid again. It almost came down to a one-on-one matchup with Jadeveon Clowney and Jimmy G in terms of he was thrown under pressure. Clowney was right in his face. He kept making throws, and then sometimes Clowney would get to. I mean, it was just a back-and-forth battle. I don't know if I've ever seen just a one-on-one defensive lineman versus quarterback battle, but it was something to watch. He was good. A couple poor decisions. Had a bad interception there under pressure, but man, we talked about it last week. The throws under pressure in the middle of the field. That was the story of this game. He made a bunch of those again.
And let's go to the bad now. Jameis Winston, just chucking. He was YOLOing more than usual on Sunday against the Detroit Lions. What did you see from Jameis? Just did not look right in that game.
Yeah, didn't look right. Just off accuracy, decision making, all that stuff. It's just overall kind of fundamentals and poise in the pocket just doesn't look right. So. Hopefully, finish the season strong, kind of get back to square one, and what he's got to do to get better next season, because it's been it's been a weird year for him.
And then Joe Flacco, Baltimore Ravens, for a team that scored 38 points against the Steelers. This was not a good quarterbacking performance. A lot of their points coming from the classic, the Flacco. We call that the 9R underthrown defensive pass interference. That is called a Flacco in PFF world. He had a couple of those, I believe. Speaking of YOLO balls, just getting away with negated interceptions, interception opportunities. Mike Wallace breaking up passes left and right. What did you see from Flacco against the Steelers?
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird to see that game and score that many points. Obviously Alex Collins went off for him, but bad interception about 10 seconds late over the middle versus cover 2.
That one made no sense whatsoever.
That was just total kind of misread in how he saw that thing play out, and then you mentioned all those plays that he ended up with some luck on with some dropped interceptions, a screen pass that he nearly threw right to a D lineman that was dropped as well. So for how many points they scored, it was definitely an odd game QB wise.
And then the last guy we're putting in the bad category, Jared Goff. And Zach, he went 16 for 26 for 199, 2 touchdowns, passer rating of 110.9. Why are we putting Goff in the bad category this week?
Oh man, this was the one that stuck out stats wise. That just does not match up with actually how he played. He was okay. He definitely had kind of a Goff game in terms of progressions and making some throws, but he was on the lucky end of 2 dropped interceptions, 1 poorly underthrown in the red zone, another off of play action that we typically see them hit that post behind the linebackers. Linebacker read it, sunk right underneath the throw and dropped the interception. So definitely had some luck on his side. He was under pressure the most in the NFL this week, 55%. Thought he handled the pressure well. Just those interceptions that were dropped kind of could have written a completely different story for that game.
That's what I'm saying about that Eagles defense. They can get after you in a hurry, even with a Rams offensive line that's been solid so far this season. If you guys are interested in a little bit more context for your quarterback play in all positions, that's all a part of PFF Edge or PFF Elite. That's where you get your PFF grades, and that's where you get the explanation that, hey, maybe a guy had 110 passer rating but didn't play that great, or maybe a guy doesn't have the best numbers. A guy like Case Keenum, it seemed like it wasn't a great game for him, but actually he made a number of good throws. Maybe his best throws were all incompletions this week. So go check it out, PFF Edge and Elite. And don't be afraid to get to ProFootballFocus.com and read all of Sam's great work and Zach and I, all the writing that we have on the site. Every single week we'll have a breakdown on every single quarterback, as we always do this week as well. So go ahead and check that out. Hit the subscribe button on your iTunes or whatever podcast provider you have, and stick with us as we have 2 more big podcasts the rest of the week, mailbag and a Week 15 preview coming up. Thanks again to everybody for listening, and we'll chat again next time.